Boris Johnson's brand of conservatism is like this, I think they call it compassionate conservatism, if you can believe such a phrase exists. But they're basically launching, some sort of investigation into, racial issues or behaviours or whatever that have happened in Parliament, and it's like between the people that are running it are basically people that have said that these black people piping up about racism today, it's all a lot of grievances that they've got, and it's all just in their head. That's like what these two MPs that are running the investigation have publicly said in the past. So like, you can do a law, you can say, oh, we're going to do an investigation, but if you like put people in front of that like have absolutely no interest, it's the same thing that Trump does with like fucking climate change and stuff. Instead of just pulling all the funding, you just like put some guy in charge of it that doesn't even fucking believe in it, and then nothing happens and nothing progresses, and it just gets stalled. So like, I think even like there's like literally nothing within the current system, especially with the current government, that would systemically like make a difference or materially make a difference. I couldn't see that coming from fucking Boris Johnson and his cronies, and I certainly couldn't see it coming from Trump and his either.
Fortunately, like this book, it doesn't even propose anything on a societal level. Like it's literally entirely about the white consumer's mind. The individual white consumer's mind.
It's like a neoliberal individualism in the sense that it puts the onus for solving this massive systemic problem on the individual consumer and whether or not they're consuming enough anti-racist information, and whether or not they're sort of taking the responsibility as a white citizen to day to day or whatever. And it just creates neurosis. It fosters this sort of cult. And I mean, white PMC liberals are already neurotic as it is, and they're basically transferring that neurosis into, because all of the fucking business ontology that they're exposed to basically makes them neurotic. I mean, if you think about everything like a market, like every single aspect of life as a market, then that makes you like absolutely neurotic, and they're sort of transferring that neurosis into the realm of anti-racism and being awarded for it. This woman is going to make millions and millions of dollars from this, and probably already has with all of her fucking corporate seminars.
Definitely.
And,
2 years, like she's been in the bestseller list the entire 2 years. She has not been number one for the entire 2 years, but as far as best selling, like consistently, she's been in like, I think the top 20. And this last week or two has been number one.
It's interesting though, because again, like there's always going to be a surplus of white guilt. And, she's a genius for finding a way to fucking profit off of that shit for sure. Like it's pretty cheeky of her to do this. And I mean, I'm tired. I mean, people say I'm hostile or whatever, but I'm tired of being told that these symbolic things are what are going to solve the problem, or, it's too difficult to look at the systemic, so maybe we should just settle for these, symbolic gestures. And I'm like, fuck that shit. Like, I think anti-racism is something that can definitely arise from workers' solidarity. People realizing
in fact,
exactly. Like, people realizing
friendship would ideally be how people talk to each other, like exchange information racially. Like this book, it is not written for people who are like friends in any way. No. Like it's literally, it makes the assumption that every relationship between like a white person and a black person or another person of color is somehow mediated through something official, whether it be the workplace or some other like institutional barrier between them. And it's so fucking like, I want to read like, it's a short quote from it, but like if I read this, like you'll understand the kind of rhetoric that is in this book. One of the things that white people have to do is name white supremacy. Like that's not the quote, but I'm just saying like that's what this quote is talking about. Naming white supremacy changes the conversation in two key ways. It makes the system visible and shifts the locus of change onto white people where it belongs. It also points us in the direction of the lifelong work that is uniquely ours, challenging our complicity with and investment in racism.
sounds like a banker trying to explain racism to me.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Like some alien came down
It's like
and learned English and then wrote this book.
It's business ontology, which is the reason why.
Yeah,
it sounds,
exactly.
Yeah.
It's like if the Mary Poppins family's dad was trying to explain racism. The investment in racism.
But like
Scrooge McDuck fucking.
also, this is the other thing. Like the lifelong work that is uniquely ours. Like that language does such like a good job of coding it as A, like the most important thing in the world, and B, completely unsolvable. It's a lifelong thing. Fuck trying to actually get rid of it.
It's also the assumption that, you know, the races don't fraternize. There's no, you know,
Well, yeah.
fraternizing and mixing of the races. Heaven forbid. I mean, there's certainly definitely not a culture of that.
Well,
in,
not
say,
even platonically.
sports,
Like, it
or,
doesn't
say,
e-
music or say anything ever.
Yeah.
like, outside of the
Literally
workplace,
anything.
basically. So what kind of fucking planet? Or
Well,
like,
and if you do it outside of the workplace, you have to act like it's the workplace. Like it has to be under this official, like, walk on eggshells.
You know
fucking
what makes
like.
me sad? Because I'm going to have to deal with this. I'm going to have to go out into the world and interact with people who have read this book, who don't see me. They just see 200, 400 years of fucking racial struggle, and they're like then turning that into. And I'm just like, I just want to buy an ice cream.
You're so strong.
Like I just want to go about my day and like buy an ice cream. Like I don't want to have to deal. Like there's that passage in the book where she pulls the black lady aside, and she's like, "Can we talk about the racism that like I just did to you? Like, is it okay if we have a moment here?" And it's like, ew. Like, and I'm pretty sure that lady was her like someone who works under her who doesn't have the sort of unction to tell her to fuck off, because that's somebody who's on
Yeah,
her
well,
fucking
yeah.
payroll. Like and I can imagine being in a workplace as a black person and having a woke boss who then decides that they're gonna fucking stroke their anti-racism ego and use you as their puppet for that by being like, if you ever need to talk about anything, if you ever felt like that I did a microaggression to you, like I can't, that's a hell. That's a dystopia. That's an awful place to be.
It is. Yeah, it sounds awful.
It just always ignores the fucking power dynamic, and it's not just at work either, because like outside of that, like where would you see something where like it's quite obvious like that? Like for me, I used to work a lot of shifts and stuff late at night in London, so I would like walk home late at night and it was kind of, you know, streets pretty empty, but you know, quite, I wouldn't say like, you know, every week, but quite often I would see a black man getting hassled by about 4 cops, either under a bridge or outside of a train station or whatever. And the thought always goes in your head, like, what the fuck, man? What the fuck has this guy done to fucking deserve 4 cops? Like, that's like, what, seriously? And you like, oh, yeah, you know, am I going to go and fucking walk over there? Am I a fucking lawyer? Like, do I go and combat what I just see as like literally like systemic white supremacy right there as a white person, as I'm fucking woke as shit? Do I go over and try and lawyer 4 cops and do that?
That
like,
shit happened to me. This fucking guy came in and he was like angry about something. He was trying to return a book, but we had like a dodgy return policy, and because it was like a day over, I couldn't give him his thing, and he got really angry and like started yelling or whatever. And I just perceived it as a guy having a bad day and yelling, and he left, and I was like, okay, whatever. And then this white liberal dude came over to me and was like, that was a racial incident. Are you okay? Do you want me to go and speak to the manager and say that I just saw a racial he was trying to like fucking white knight on my behalf. And I was like, I didn't perceive that as racism at all. But he was like, no, he told me that I was conditioned to not see racism and that he perceived it as racism.
Well, that's the exact shit that like people reading this book would say, because that's what this is focused on. 100%. Like it tells us well, I mean, I have a litany of problems with the book, but like, not only does it not really mention any like coercive forces in any form of complicity, like it basically levies the entirety of like complicity onto the individual. And that's one of the biggest things a person can do is like deal with their discomfort. Like it's that kind of things an individual can do which don't actually touch anyone's financial interests.